About 1998, I was talking with a guy named John Duckworth, and we were kicking around ideas for shows, and they were all pretty good, but there was one that caught my eye, and it was an Easter Carol, and it was just a couple of lines. It said Ebenezer Nezer, runs a factory making plastic Easter eggs, but his perception of Easter is as hollow as the empty plastic eggs that come out of his factory. And that was, about it. And he thought that Bob the Tomato could be Bob Cratchit, and, Junior could be Tiny Tim.
And God blessed us, everyone!
But the problem has always been, how do you take something that's so well known as a Christmas Carol and make it new and exciting? How do you put your own spin on it, but yet remain true to the original source material? Because the Christmas Carol is a beautiful piece of literature. It's very faith-based.
I was amazed with how powerful it was. I had tears in my eyes by the end of it, just seeing the redemption of this man's life.
I've seen what life would be like without the hope of Easter. Believe me, you don't want to go there.
One of the things about telling the Easter story was the whole idea of telling the story of Jesus, because early on we made the decision not to portray Jesus as a vegetable.
So how do we tell the story of Easter if we can't portray Jesus as a vegetable, which was Veggietales rule number 1 from the very beginning? And so, way back in, it was late 97 or early 98, we had a brainstorming session, and we were just throwing around ideas, and somebody threw out, what if we tell the story through stained glass windows? I remember going home that day thinking, we just solved the puzzle. So once we settled on an Easter Carol, is we're going to tell the Easter story, in the setting of Dickens' London. Then all of a sudden light bulbs went on. We said, well, then we can do a new Christmas special too. And since we have to build London once, we can do both of these. Really create these two stories together to bookend each other. The beginning of the story with Christmas and the end of the story with Easter, using the same characters and the same settings, and it becomes, really a two-part story that should be taken together.
There's a story that started on Christmas, when a baby was born in the night.
We were in the middle of Jonah and developing the Christmas show and Easter Carol at the same time.
Well, actually, Easter and the script had been around a long time, way before the Star of Christmas.
So it was interesting trying to change the original concept for Easter, the Easter Carol, that is, to fit in with the Star of Christmas. Because originally, Bob and Larry were going to have a different role in the Easter Carol. Bob was running this whole huge factory by himself originally, and then since we had partnered them as the writing duo in the Star of Christmas, we decided to let them both work in the factory together, and which is great because they make a great team.
It actually was in production during parts of Jonah. We kind of, I jokingly call it, we were making it under the belly of the whale. I think probably the Easter show had more animators working on it than any other show that Veggietales has ever made, including Jonah.
What?
In a nutshell, there would be guys that did the first layout on the shot, so we determine all the camera angles, how we're going to view that shot so we can plan it. And then the animators will animate the characters and the bucket that they're in, for instance, things like that. And then we turn it over to the effects guys. And the effects guys will go through that shot and add the explosions, the fire, the brick material flying out in every direction, and just put that all together.
Oh, we made it!
When we came up with the idea to tell the Easter story through the stained glass windows, it occurred to me that the best way to do it, rather than just with a dry narrator, would be to do it in song. Then that song became vitally important. If the song was really going to tell the story within the story, that was the reason for the whole thing, it needed to be more than just me, Mr. Lunt, warbling away. We had also settled on the idea of a music box angel, this little angel character that would come to life out of a music box and be the visitor.
We wanted to have Rebecca St. James do Hope in this show. That was kind of a concept that occurred early on.
Ding, ding, ding. Give the man a prize.
I've recorded a few little animation pieces, but nothing like Veggietales. And so when I heard through our office in Nashville that Phil and the gang at Veggietales were interested in me being involved in role. I was so excited.
Come on, let's get going. We've got some ground to cover.
One of the things that I like about her is her feistiness. She's just really, I mean, she's got attitude, probably a little more attitude than I have in real life, but I can be feisty. But she also is, I think, sensitive. You know, Neza, at a few points, is really vulnerable, and she's gentle with him.
She was just so wonderful to work with and so enthusiastic about doing the show. And then when we went into the recording session, she just really did a marvelous job, and it came out wonderfully.
Oh, you're not a miser or a Scrooge or anything like that. Just don't see what's right in front of you. I'm used to being in the studio doing music, but not so much, you know, doing voiceovers for angels. So it's a very new experience, but very exciting experience. Your worst nightmare. Oh, I've always wanted to say that.
Is it
Ding, ding, ding. Give the man a prize. Perhaps you aren't as dense as they say.
Because we were setting this in England, and she's an Australian performer, she could do the accent without having to fake it.
I could really rely a lot on my Australian heritage and Australian accent, but I really had to kind of pull out a lot of British accent as well, and it was very fun because it's really going back to my roots. There's a line in the movie where I tell Neza that he's a first-class stinker, and I really love that because I can pull out the English Australian accent and just kind of get really feisty with it. So that's my favorite line.
Rebecca is very intuitive in delivering emotion with her songs. That was the way I communicated with her, not to try to tell her exactly how to say something, but what emotion she needed to convey. This is the heartfelt moment between you and Neza.
Okay.
Take it when you're ready.
It is really fun being another character and really trying to pull out, you know, of your own experience and then of other voices that you've heard what that character needs to be. It's a very fascinating process.
They're talking about the hope of Easter. The hope of Easter changes everything.
It's a very, just a very intimate Christian message. And so it's actually a little special to everybody that worked on the show.
Easter is the story that's closest to my heart that I've done since I've been at Big Idea. I think just because it's so incredibly deep in its faith orientation. It was a very careful line to tread because we've got vegetables speaking about something that we hold as eternal truths, and you have to balance the silly and the sacred, but I think we pulled it off.